join me in welcoming Kirsty to talk about the Liberalists.
Thank you. So, basically, Liberalists Down Under, not conformity of thought, but a kinship of values. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a history behind the Liberalist Society and then, of course, our Liberalists Down Under group. Liberalist Society is an international activist movement initiated by various YouTube streamers who publicly identify as classical liberals, as an alternative to the regressive left and the alt-right. A liberal is someone who subscribes to the classical liberal values of the Enlightenment. Therefore, a liberalist is an activist for classical liberalism. A number of events led to the rise of the Liberalist Society, with the actual foundation being attributed to just one man and one moment. So I'm going to give some background first. For anyone not involved in internet culture, this history might be quite new. Beginning in 2013 and culminating in 2014 with the Gamergate controversy, a large number of previously politically disinterested millennials felt their social domain was being intruded upon by media outlets bent on political correctness. The response to this was not always tactful, sure, but importantly the result was an awakening by many in this internet-savvy generation to the concept of politically correct elites attempting to demonise and force their views upon a populace. Quite suddenly, the social aspects of politics was on the radar for many of whom it previously was not. In the following years, a number of other contributing events occurred, significantly the split in what was known as the YouTube skeptic community. On one side, those who favour free speech, and on the other, those who choose social justice-driven political correctness and identity politics. For some time, amongst online communities, there has been equality-orientated and censorship-willing social justice warriors, or SJWs for short, and the free speech-loving meritocratic types known, for lack of a better term, anti-SJWs. In 2015, Milo Yiannopoulos attempted to coin the term cultural libertarian to describe the anti-SJWs. Although this is a fairly accurate description due to a stronger focus on cultural and social issues and less so on economic topics, the term never really gained any traction. His article titled Rise of the Cultural Libertarian is indeed a worthwhile read, and the importance of this culture war cannot be underestimated. As Andrew Breitbart famously said, politics is downstream from culture. Throughout all this, one British YouTube-based commentator was rising in prominence with his well-considered and often scathing attacks on the identity politics of the social justice warriors and on the politically correct mainstream media. This man is Carl Benjamin, better known by his online pseudonym Sargon of Akkad. And today he has 852,000 subscribers to his main channel, as well as individual videos with millions of views. He describes himself as a classical liberal and is amongst a small group of online commentators who have succeeded in bringing in countless people, many of whom were previously disengaged millennials, into the realm of socio-political talk. After long warring with the social justice warriors and a new conflict with the ethno-nationalist movement known as the alt-right, Benjamin put out a video in early January this year titled 2018 What We Can Do. In this short video, he apologised for not taking things seriously and came up with his plan for activism in real life. He encouraged a very broad church who agree at minimum on the core values of classical liberalism to come together and get off the internet. At the end of the video, he states the following: if someone who promotes feminism is a feminist, and someone who promotes socialism is a socialist, and someone who promotes fascism is a fascist, then someone who promotes liberalism is a liberalist. Hence, the Liberalist Society was born, with the intention of serious liberal activism. Despite being the founder, or at least the originator of the term, Benjamin has let many other enthusiastic and willing individuals take leading roles in the society. There is no single global authority, and each chapter is largely independent. Liberalists themselves are a diverse group, and people quite often have different views and opinions. So the only requirement for joining is that you agree with the following core principles, which I'm going to list now. Individual rights. Protecting the rights of the individual must be the highest value of a society to foster mutual tolerance and respect towards the cultivation of the dignity of every person. Democracy. Constitutional democracy is the best way for a free citizenry to maintain a state and resist tyranny. Economic freedom. Property rights that begin with personal self-ownership and private property creates the most productive societies. Freedom of speech. Freedom of expression is a necessary and fundamental pillar of a free society. Self-reliance. People possess agency and should be treated as such because treating people like victims is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Blind justice. Each individual should be governed by the same laws as their peers without arbitrary discrimination and be presumed innocent until proven guilty by a fair trial. And lastly, secularism. Everybody is free to practice their religion or not, and as long as it does not interfere with the rights of others. This list is held as the ideal. However, in the real world, no set of principles can ever be fully realised, but by promoting this worldwide view, we can produce a demonstrably better society than the current alternatives. Due to the liberalist society being intertwined with modern internet culture, it is proving to do a good job of attracting younger people, which we feel is quite important due to the increasing prominence of politically hard left groups in university campuses. For example, in Britain, the Liberalist Society organised a street blocking march with hundreds of attendees for the purpose of protesting Britain's speech restricting laws. Liberalist chapters have formed in Australia, with our Melbourne branch being the largest and most active so far. The Liberalists Down Under Facebook group was initiated by a teenager from regional Australia after he saw the Sargon of Akkad clip on YouTube. Initially joining up to the Liberalist group when it was at nearly 400 members, he saw the chaos and the speed of the internet bring the group up to 1,500 members in a matter of days, and regional chapters appearing within the first 24 hours. So being a young man searching for the opportunity to establish connections, make friends and be part of something he truly believes in, he created the Australian chapter of the Liberalists. This little Aussie group was noticed within the main group due to the persistence and obvious charm of its young creator. At much the same time, a Melbourne meetup had been formed for like-minded people where 8 to 10 members started to attend. This then joined with the Facebook group and the Liberalist Down Under chapter grew from there. The Melbourne chapter is about to launch a letter writing campaign to state MPs regarding Victoria's borderline blasphemy laws and is likely to produce flyers and stickers to counter the propaganda efforts of Melbourne's hard left activist groups such as CAF and Antifa. Members from Melbourne also help with organising and promoting the recent March for Men. In addition to more traditional activism, we also hold social events which have proven to be very successful, no doubt due to how fun it is just to hang out with like-minded, politically engaged people. Plans are in the works for bi-monthly comedy nights around Melbourne, as well as linking with the return of the monthly Liberty on the Rocks social nights hosted by the Australian Taxpayers Alliance. These types of events are a good way to expose people to liberal ideals and to perhaps plant the seed in the minds of opposition. Often, recovered victims of regressive ideas can become the strongest advocates. Now, I just want to, before I talk about the march, I just wanted to reveal our very brand new logo that just got worked out last week and decided upon last week. I introduce the Kekabara. So basically with him, obviously he's a bit of a fun guy and once again being the internet culture, kek being laughing, lol. It's better than a deer, exactly, deer in the headlights. So he's also facing the left and laughing at them, obviously. He's got his mouth open because we're all about freedom of speech and he's just fun and that's what we're about. It's pretty good, isn't he? We love him.
Oh, I'll get with the kek culture.
Kekabara, exactly. So I'm just also going to very briefly talk about the March for Men, which a lot of the Liberalist group helped out with as well. The March for Men itself was held in the Melbourne CBD on August 25th this year. The rise in anti-male propaganda that reached a peak after the murder of Melbourne woman Eurydice Dixon spurred young YouTuber and journalist Sydney Watson to come up with the idea to counteract the narrative. As a close friend of mine and also having a passion for equal rights and counteracting the craziness of modern feminism, Sydney approached me to help with the organisation. We came up with a name and a logo and then enlisted plenty of helpers to get the ball rolling. Within a day of announcing the march, there was a protest organised by the National Union of Students Women Department, as well as CAF, the Campaign Against Racism and Fascism. For some reason, that's still incomprehensible to me why. Then, as the abuse filtered in from various feminists, we continued to gain momentum and also faced the wrath of a notable few within the men's rights movement. Dealing with all that, we were still able to gain a lot of media attention and finalise our speakers, and we set up a GoFundMe for expenses, but also we wanted to have a lot left over for a donation to a men's charity, which was actually difficult to find, to be honest, because there's not many around. A big reason behind the march was also to promote the value that men and masculinity bring into the balance of a society, as well as bring the various small men's help resources into one place. The social media pages were very active leading into the march, with the Facebook page and the Instagram page, with many men describing the terrible circumstances they were in, to things like the family court, as well as people also just telling us how far they were travelling just for the event, which was quite amazing, because quite a few people came from interstate. It was really intense. As CAF and the NUS had been on a poster blitz around the city, proclaiming our march as some sort of neo-Nazi event full of rapists and rape apologists, we Liberalists decided that it was necessary to do a blitz of our own. Hundreds of March for Men stickers were placed all around the city and various suburbs, and countless CAF posters torn down. And we felt pretty victorious after that. It gave us a bit of a rush tearing their posters down, I got to say. Good. On the day of the march, as the speakers arrived in Melbourne from around the country, the police and the protesters started gathering in Federation Square in very large numbers, so I knew this was going to be big. We had hundreds of t-shirts, stickers and flags waving. Numbers were around 500, with 100 or so people unable to get through the police barrier that they had to make to protect us from the violent, screaming horde of around 150 protesters. Our speakers included Sydney herself. We also had Jared Cherkop, a young male victim of sexual assault and domestic violence; Robert Brockway, a long-term men's rights activist and author; Shani Randazzo, a Muslim counter-feminist who has been through the domestic violence shelters due to a violent mother; and Rob Tiller, a counsellor who was forced to resign from his job with Relationships Australia for sharing a Bettina Arndt article about the domestic violence statistics that went against the narrative of only women are victims. All of these people were screamed down and called Nazis and fascists by the mob. An air horn was going off as Shani tried to tell her story about the shelters and how she was rejected due to having a 13-year-old son, because you can't have boys over 12-year-old in any domestic violence shelter. She did a great job of holding back the tears, and the support from the crowd was an absolutely beautiful thing. The whole experience was extremely emotional, and thankfully there wasn't much drama with the protesters. I received a call from the CEO of our chosen charity, which was Dads in Distress, who advised me that as they were watching the live stream, men were calling in and expressing their renewed faith in the world, and that they wouldn't kill themselves that day. The extremely high suicide rate amongst men was one of the big issues we had raised, so I felt that was a victory all on its own. Naturally, we finished off in the pub. The speakers, the Liberalist helpers, and many from the men's groups and charities. A good feed and great conversation really intensified all the positive emotions from the day, and I know we'll be happy to do another one next year, only bigger. That's it. We do have one of the guys that got into a bit of a trouble is down the end there.
There was a little bit of drama.
There was a little bit of drama.
I loved it so much I decided to go away.
When's the next meet-up for Liberalists?
3 weeks' time.
So 3 weeks on Saturday.
Yes, we have them every month. And we do have the Facebook page, which is just called the Liberalists Down Under. We basically have our Melbourne meetups every month, and we've just got a whole bunch of projects going on at the moment. So our comedy nights are going to be a bi-monthly event in various locations around the city. We are all loving the word front hole at the moment, so the comedy nights, a play on words, is going to be called Full Front Hole. That's one of our things, and then, as I said, I'm also bringing back, it's a worldwide thing called Liberty on the Rocks. It used to be in Melbourne, Ballarat and Geelong, and it kind of just fizzled. We haven't had one here since the start of the year. That's coming back November the 2nd. It's always the first Friday of the month, with the first one being at the Imperial Hotel in Bourke Street. But yeah, so that's basically us, and that's how we sort of describe a liberalist, is where it's not just a whole bunch of kids on the internet whinging about stuff. We actually want to get out there in real life and do stuff.